Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up in which I will try really hard not to say the word interesting, because obviously the books that I've chosen I thought at some point or another were going to be interesting to read, and that's why I picked them up, but I can't seem to stop saying interesting when I'm describing the books that I'm reading. So I mentioned that I was trying to read a lot more French books in February to make it a French February or whatever. And I did manage to read 2 books in French, and the first one was La persistance de la question palestinienne, which discusses the Palestinian-Israeli situation from an angle that I'd never really heard of before, and it sort of questions the boundaries of what it means to be Semitic or Zionist or anti-Zionist and all of those words that get flung around quite a lot. And I really liked how he kind of broke down, certainly historically, I suppose, what the Zionist objective has kind of been and what their views on Semitism and anti-Semitism were, and kind of how language sort of gets policed in the politics of things, and how that kind of use of language can direct the way that people think globally, not just on national scales. This one I was actually surprised how both easy and difficult it was to follow at times. Overall, I would say it was really easy for me to read in French, and I think if you are like a B2 level on the CEFR scale of language learning levels, whatever, then I think this would be technically easy enough for you to get on with. But I found that a lot of my lack of knowledge, of in-depth knowledge on the topic, was something that was kind of making it difficult when he would have long sentences with different clauses in them referencing things that I had no idea about. At some point, an attack on a hotel was mentioned, and I had no idea before reading this book anything at all about that incident, and I had to look into it. But it meant that because that was just mentioned in passing, it made the whole reading of that paragraph a little bit confusing for me. But overall, it had a lot of content in there that I was completely unaware of, and it really sparked something for me, and I want to look further into the topic. And obviously I know that it's a highly charged, controversial topic, but it's one that I really would like to look more into, and especially now, in British politics anyway, there are claims of anti-Semitism throughout different parties and things. How valid or not that is, I guess is up to interpretation. I also liked that there were loads of sources and stuff, but that's always a really good sign in any nonfiction for me personally, because this topic is so charged. I think I don't want to just take it at face value, because there was reference to a lot of other philosophers, for example, who I think the experience of reading this might have been more enriched had I been more familiar with their works, which I'm not yet. So I think this might be possibly one to revisit once I have covered a few more of those philosophers, and then when one of them or another is mentioned and something is quoted from them, I can be more aware of whether or not that thing that was quoted from them is typical of them, or is showing them to be hypocritical, or if it is a strange thing for them to say and is all the more potent because they've said it, because that's not something that they would normally be in line with. So overall, I really enjoyed that experience, to be honest. I think just reading anything in French and getting to the end of it makes me feel pretty pleased. I think there actually is a translation in English, but as far as I can tell, it's like an academic copy or something, and it's a little pricey, whereas in French it was like £7 or something like that, so it wasn't very pricey at all. Would I recommend it? I guess it's not super accessible, that one, but I mean, if any of you can read French or want to spend whatever money it is to buy an academic text, then yeah, I'd say go for it. So the second book that I read in February was also a French book, and in fact it was a French comic, and it was the third and final installment in the Beauté series, or Beauté in French. And I feel sort of similarly to how I did at the end of Miss Partouche, and I don't know if you remember, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned that I really loved that series, but the end just wasn't satisfying for me. And this kind of had a little bit of that, but to a lesser degree though. There was a storyline that broke off from the main storyline, and I thought it would tie back in a bit more at the end than it did. It kind of just didn't, and that just didn't quite feel, not that it wasn't resolved, it just didn't quite feel rounded off in a super satisfying way, though I mean, it wasn't a huge deal, but I think the thing that felt the most unsatisfying, I guess, to me, was that the main character is a naive, I guess you could say, I would go as far as to say, simple and selfish woman who just wants to be beautiful, and all through, like, the first... oh, spoiler, I guess? All through the first 2 books, she doesn't really show much growth, and then suddenly at the end, in this last book, she's like more mature now or something, and it felt a bit to me like it was almost implied that that was because of her becoming a mother, and then, I don't know, it feels a bit uncomfortable for me, these associations with motherhood and just suddenly becoming better and more knowledgeable as if by magic. That just doesn't sit well with me so much, so it wasn't as big a disappointment of an ending as Miss Partouche was for me, and overall I enjoyed the experience of reading it still, so, you know, I don't want to hate on it or anything like that. It's just I have tiny quibbles with it, that's all. But overall, I really like the series, so yeah, great job, guys, great job. If you have any questions about any of these books and would like me to go further into them, then please feel free to ask in the comments, because I love having discussions down there with you guys. And if you've read anything that's particularly good, or that you think that I would like, maybe, absolutely leave that down below in the comments as well, because actually in March I've read a book that was recommended to me by Matt from MCS Books, and I really liked that book, and I was kind of surprised that he was able to really know what I would get on with pretty well. So if you have any suggestions or anything like that, always please feel free to recommend away. And that's it for today. I will see you next time. Bye.